Hi, this is Raj from MR Sportscars. In this episode of Diary of a Porsche Specialist, I'm going to actually film two cars that I've wanted to film for years, but I've never had both of them in stock at the same time. So the first is a 997 Gen 2 Carrera 4S manual. The other one is the 997 Gen 2 Carrera 4S PDK. Both are coupes, and I'm going to do a driving review mainly in this episode, but first of all let me just show you what the physical differences are between the two cars. So looking first at the manual, obviously you've got the manual gearbox there in the middle. I won't go through the options on these cars, that will be in another future video comparing these two with a third 997 Gen 2, so stay tuned for that, and please do subscribe to the channel so you get notified of when that one is out, as well as any other Porsche content I produce. I focus predominantly on this era of cars, 2009 to 2015, 911s, Caymans and Boxsters, so please do subscribe. Obviously there's the manual gearbox there, which is a 6-speed manual. It's made by Aisin, A-I-S-I-N, not Getrag, and it's got 3 pedals. Now I'm going to drive the two cars back to back and tell you how I think they feel different, because I get that question a lot on the phone, but also over email. Which should I get? Should I wait for a manual because the manuals are rarer, or should I go for the PDK because it's more usable day to day? And I'll try and answer those two questions throughout this video. So there's the 7-speed PDK. It's a double clutch transmission, so it's got 2 clutches submerged in oil. Well, it's a transmission oil specifically, and it's a very fast system. It's ready to change up or down in an instant from any gear. It's got 7 speeds rather than 6, and it's made by ZF rather than Aisin. None of the gearboxes are made by Porsche. They are from specialist companies like ZF and Aisin in these two cars. Obviously there's no third pedal. The middle pedal is bigger as well, just like most autos have. And then the steering wheels, there's 3 styles of steering wheel for these cars. Obviously you can get different leather trims, you can get carbon and things, but basically you have, this is called the Sport Design steering wheel, and with a PDK car, you can get this in a manual as well, but with a PDK it will come with full-size paddles here. And I'll just quickly show you some of the other 2 steering wheels. Actually, one of them is in here, which is the basic steering wheel, which is still round center leather steering wheel, same width and everything, but it doesn't have paddles on it. If it was a PDK, it would have rocker switches. And then there is a third option, which is a multi-function steering wheel, and on the PDK that has rocker switches as well, so on either side you can go up or down a gear. The Sport Design one is a bit more involving, and it's sort of the preferred choice for the PDK because the paddles are much bigger and there's no complication of having each side being able to control up or down. It's just on the right side you've got to go up a gear, and on the left hand side you've got just a paddle to go down a gear, and they follow the steering wheel, so you've always got them in your hands if you're at sort of 10 and 2. So now I'm going to drive the two cars, and let me just show you how different they look. This has got aftermarket Martini stripes, which are removable, but they're so beautiful I've decided to keep them on there, but they are removable and they can be removed for sale. This car's got a sunroof, which this one doesn't. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff as well, but that's for another video. I'm just going to drive the two now. So I'm going to start with driving the PDK first, and then I'll step into the manual gearbox car. Okay, I'm here in the 997 Gen 2 Carrera 4S PDK Coupe first. I thought I'd drive this one first because most of the 997 Gen 2s that are on the market and that were produced were the PDK gearbox. So this is the ZF 7-speed semi-automatic gearbox, which can be run in manual, auto, or like a hybrid mode where you can basically start changing gear as you wish. The car's cold, so I'm going to let it run for a little while before actually pushing it at all or putting it in manual mode or anything. This car has Sport Chrono Package Plus, which for a lot of people is a must with the PDK box, because it, at the touch of a button, it really wakes it up when you put it in Sport or Sport Plus. Sport Plus I would actually only recommend using if you've got it in full manual mode on the road, or if you want to use it in auto, it's really only for the track, because it does hold the gears all the way up to the red line, which I think is a bit too extreme for road driving in most cases. Now, most people were talked into getting the PDK box when these cars were new, because they really were the best of all worlds. They were slightly quicker to accelerate. Just the 60 figure is 0 to 60 is around 4.3 with chrono, versus with the manual it's around 4.5, so 0.2 maybe 0.3 seconds quicker to just to 60. It's a lot more easier to cope with if you're in prolonged periods of traffic. So the first owners might have been using these cars to commute, so they would have always been told, if you're going to be sitting, say, on the M25 every day, the PDK is perfect, because through those periods of traffic it isn't a strain on your left leg with the clutch. You can sort of not have to change gear all the time while in traffic, but also when you do get onto a B road, it would there we go. Once you get onto a B road, you can put it in manual mode, flick through the gears, use the steering wheel to change gears with the paddles, and yeah, have a great time. So it was really a great system. Also, it's relatively maintenance free. Now, I know there are some PDK oil changes that are due at 6 years and 12 years, with a filter change at 12 years as well, which includes the sump. But these cars don't need a new clutch. The two clutches which I mentioned are submerged in oil are in theory not supposed to wear. Porsche do give them a warranty. Well, they say that they should last the life of the car, and I believe that sort of means 200,000 miles of use, normal use, those clutches should last. So most people aren't ever going to hit that in their 997 Gen 2s, because these cars are increasingly becoming collector's items. Even the ones that are just slightly over 100,000 miles are probably only doing 2,000 to 3,000 miles a year now. There are some outliers. I've seen some outliers of those scenarios of 90% of the cars, but in general terms, the PDK box is largely maintenance free, other than those oil changes I mentioned. There have been some instances of gearbox failures, but not a huge amount. I would say maybe a couple of dozen across the UK. I've come across one car that had a whole new box outside of warranty, but again, I think that one had an issue where the specialist who'd done an oil change on it 6 months before had maybe done something wrong, because it failed not soon after having that work done. Now, in terms of how they drive, they really are the best of all worlds. So now the car's up to temperature now. The oil is now reading above the minimum, so I'm pushing it a little bit more. The gearbox is so intuitive. It sort of reads how you want to drive based on how you hold the throttle, how aggressively you push the throttle. I mean, even then I just sort of like semi-punch the throttle and it's gone from 6th to 4th. If I do it a lot more aggressively, it jumps all the way to 2nd. So it's a great system at sort of trying to figure out what you want to do. That's without touching any of the paddles, and at any time, as I said, in that hybrid mode, I'm in full auto, but I can start changing gear. So I'm down to 3rd. Now when you put it in Sport or Sport Plus, it changes the behaviour, so it will keep the gears for longer before changing them. It will downshift more aggressively, and then Sport Plus is on another level, because it sort of holds the gears all the way to the red line and downshifts as soon as it's able to. The PDK gearbox actually also protects the engine, so you can't miss-shift a PDK, and that's another benefit of having one of these cars, especially if it's your first Porsche, is you can't mess up and go from 5th to 2nd like you can in a manual by mistake. Because the gates, I mean, if you're not used to a Porsche, the gates on the manual gearbox are quite close. I mean, yes, it is a very intuitive shift, but in your nervousness, you may switch gears and go to the wrong gear, which can potentially cause an over rev. So that's where you go beyond the rev limit. If you went from 5th to 2nd, you could potentially get like a range 3, 4, 5, or even 6 over rev, which can potentially put unneeded and potentially damaging strain on the engine. So when we buy cars, whether they're PDK or PDK or manual, we always check the over rev history using our PWIS system before, and then that report is available as a PDF on our website, along with all the maintenance and everything else that's been done on the car. Now, I'm now stuck behind a row of cars behind some cyclists. I haven't had to change down, I haven't had to think about how I need to adjust how I'm driving to be crawling along at 17 miles an hour on a 60 mile an hour road. In a manual, you would have to then sort of make a decision on how you wanted to hold the gears and everything. With the PDK, you can just relax, just focus on what the issue is here. It's 2 cyclists next to each other, and it's potentially a very difficult overtake, so you can just literally focus on the cars in front. Are they going to suddenly brake or anything? And just be ready at any time to get past the obstacles. So the PDK is great for that. It means you can keep both hands on the wheel at all times. You've got the paddles, which I've already shown you, at your fingertips when you're at sort of 10 and 2 or 9 and 3, whatever you prefer. And it's just a beautiful place to be, because you've got all that power, all of that potential, and you've got no distractions. So for that reason, the PDK, I think, is the perfect first Porsche. Here we go. So I could go past with ease and not have to be out in the wrong side for very long. I don't have to sort of struggle with, oh, where's the gear stick? I've now all of a sudden got an opportunity, but I wasn't prepared mentally for it. With the PDK, you just put your foot down, hold on to the steering wheel, and make sure you're just driving responsibly, basically. So that's what I would say about the PDK. It is, in some ways, the safer box, both for maintenance and also for just driving on a B road on a Saturday morning like I am now. You're more able to control the car if a situation was to arise, and it is such a subtle difference. I mean, obviously, if you're a very capable driver, it makes no difference at all, and if you're paying attention, it makes no difference at all. But the amount of time that you spend trying to adjust what you're doing when you see something in front of you is obviously a delay in reacting. And with the PDK, I feel that you can react slightly quicker and have confidence in changing speed, either accelerating or decelerating, because your hands are on the wheel at all times, in theory. Obviously, if you put it in manual mode, so you switch it to the side, and now it's in full manual and the display says it's in manual mode, you can use it like a sequential rally box. So you pull it towards you to go down a gear and push it away to go up a gear. In that mode, you can brush the red line, and that, if you do brush the red line quite aggressively, it'll be a range 1 and 2 over rev, which aren't actually overly straining on the engine. So quite often PDKs will have a range, some ignitions in range 1 or 2, but we don't see that as an issue, and Porsche don't either. They see 4, 5 and 6 in particular in the last 50 engine hours as being an issue. So I'm just going to turn around here in this lovely pub's car park. It's a bit dusty at the moment because we've got a massive drought in this area of the UK, in Hertfordshire, between London and Cambridge, if you're not in the UK. Just to give you a point of reference. When you're in full manual mode, which I was, you don't have to remember to change down to first gear when you come to a stop. It will automatically do that for you. So I'm in full manual mode now, and I'll put it in Sport Plus actually, because that will increase the speed at which it changes gear in manual mode. It also switched on PASM as well, which I'm going to leave it on for now, but actually I find PASM, when you've got it on the sports mode, is too bouncy on a bad sort of undulating sort of usual B road in the UK. It's a bit too crashy for my liking. I've just overtaken another cyclist now with the beautiful weather. Everyone wants to be out, which is fair enough. I mean, I do find the PDK, especially with this gear, with this steering wheel, the sport design steering wheel, very involving, because these paddles are super intuitive. They're perfectly balanced and weighted. They've got a metal feel. I'm not sure if they're fully metal, but they are at least metal coated, so you do feel like they are solid. They've got a nice positive shift when you press them. I've got the sports exhaust open as well. It's just such a wonderful place to be. Both hands on the steering wheel, so you can be fully alert to what's coming up. And when you press the brakes are so brilliant on these S models. You'll know when a car's got the bigger brake kit, as it's called, because it's got red calipers. Some people will have had their Carrera calipers painted red, so just be aware of that. But generally an S will have either the big brake kit, or it may have been upgraded to even further to the Porsche carbon ceramic brakes, which normally have yellow calipers, unless someone spec'd from the factory to change the colour to whatever they fancied. And they could be spec'd on the Carrera as well. I've had a Carrera with PCCBs as well. So that's the end of the driving of the PDK. In summary, I think it's a great all-rounder. It's a great first Porsche, and if you find one in the spec that you want, but you wanted a manual, but a PDK has everything, I would say don't rule it out. So now I'm going to step into the manual. Right, I'm now in the manual gearbox 997 Gen 2 Carrera 4S. It does have the sunroof, but I'm not going to open it, just to keep the video completely consistent across the two cars. Now this car has obviously the 6-speed manual, which is the big difference I want to review in this video, but it doesn't have sport chrono. Now with a manual gearbox car, it isn't really so much an issue, because the Sport Chrono system package, the Sport Chrono Package Plus system, doesn't affect how the manual gearbox operates. All it does is change how aggressive the throttle pedal is in terms of sensitivity to how you press it. So really, it isn't a necessary addition. If you do get Sport Chrono Package Plus, it doesn't add the Sport Plus button. All it adds is the Sport button, which just basically makes the throttle more aggressive. So I would say it's not a must to have the stopwatch and then the Sport button on the dashboard, because with it naturally being a more involving drive with the 6-speed manual that you completely control with the clutch and with the gears, there's no need for it, because you can just change gear quicker. But obviously a fully manual system where you engage a clutch, change gear, is never going to be as efficient or as quick as a mechanized system that you get in the PDK box. And that's something that in the brochures will tell you it's more efficient, it's quicker, and it is quicker from A to B. If you were timing the two on a racetrack, it would be a quicker, more capable car, and it would perform better on paper, on the timing, on the stopwatch, if you had the PDK box. But what the numbers don't tell you, so that slightly slower acceleration, is how the feel of the drive is very different with the manual gearbox car. And that's why a lot of people do ask me, should I wait for a manual? Because as I said, the manuals are a lot rarer. Somewhere between 10 and 20% of this era of 911 came with the manual gearbox, so it's 1 in 5. And then you've got to look at, well, what's actually for sale at any one time. It tends to be predominantly more PDKs. PDKs change hands more than the manual gearbox cars. It's just a fact. It's just from what I've seen over years of dealing with these cars. I mean, I've been trading in these cars for 7-8 years now. I see what the trend has been over time, and there were more autos. Porsche don't actually tell you the split of autos to manuals, but you can look it up on how many left, because the V5, the description of the car is different. It says S-A, semi-automatic, at the end of all the PDK box cars. All the manuals just don't have that at all. So you can decipher in a particular year, say 2012, how many were of a particular model were autos and how many were manuals. But basically the numbers sort of tie in with about 10 to 20% of all the cars, all the 911s were manual gearbox. So that means that between 80 and 90% of them were the PDKs. And I do sell a lot more PDKs, and as I've said, while I was driving the PDK, fantastic box, great for traffic, great for B roads, and everything in between. But the level of involvement in controlling the gears yourself, controlling where the revs are at any particular point, does lead to more involvement, and as a result, sometimes more satisfaction. I think that if you've had a few Porsches and you just want to use it for fun drives, then yeah, I would say, if you can, get a manual, because it is that much more rewarding. If you have the confidence to drive these cars as they're designed and intended to be driven, the manual gearbox is going to be more rewarding. Yes, you're not going quite as fast, but being able to control the gears, for me, who grew up with manual gearbox cars, obviously maybe people in the younger generation who haven't really had experiences of manual gearbox cars, maybe it's completely lost on them, the art of changing gears, the art of heel and toeing, balancing the clutch, knowing when to engage the clutch, how quickly to engage the clutch, how to be sympathetic to an engine, might be completely lost on them. But for my era and my generation, so I was born in the early 80s, so 80s, I would say sort of up to the, I think, up to the end of the 80s or older, I think most of us appreciate driving a stick shift, driving a manual gearbox car, and how it increases the level of involvement way beyond any auto, no matter how efficient, no matter whether it's got paddles or not, whether it blips the throttle for you or not. I think the manual gearbox is always going to be the most engaging. So I'm still on that same B road, and it just feels like I'm more in the flow of the car. With the PDK, I did mention you can kind of not have to worry about what gear you're in, but and that's great because it takes some of the pressure off when you're driving. But with the manual gearbox, it forces you to stay in the zone, and I think that's another thing that can be said as an advantage for the manual, is you have to think about it, so therefore you stay more focused, and therefore you potentially get more out of the drive. It's a very subtle thing, I think, to some people, but for me it's just glaringly obvious that if you have to be always sure of what you're doing at every point, it's not necessarily stressful, but it's just more engaging. So when you get out of the car, you feel like you've really achieved something almost. So that's that. I mean, obviously the clutch pedal is slightly heavy. They do vary slightly car to car, and it's not down to how worn the clutch is. It's down to the release mechanism and how it came from the factory, how stiff it was. There is a tolerance level, and there is a margin of how stiff the clutch pedal is, and sometimes you can change the clutch to try and make it less force required to control the clutch. But really, from feedback from customers is it really doesn't make any difference to how a particular car, how stiff the clutch is. The gearbox is absolutely great. I mentioned that there is the possibility of misshifting, but really once you get used to it, it's very easy to know where the gears are and sort of feed them in without crunching gears or anything like that. The throw is quite long. This car has got the standard shift mechanism from the factory. There was the option for the short shift kit, which can be retrofitted as well, and that does make it quite I think it about halves the travel of each gear when you're using it, so it does make it that little bit more engaging, I'd say. Just going to turn around now, again in that lovely pub. It's called the Rusty Gun, and it's on the Hitchin Road, I think it is, between Codicut and Hitchin. It's so sad to see them closed for such a long time during the pandemic, but it's great to see that they're open again, and I'm sure they'll be busy all weekend. It's a Saturday morning here, so car park's empty. I'm sure they noticed me turning around here. Hope they don't mind, but it's a great little section of road that I take here, and I normally drive people when they come for test drives on this road as well. I normally drive on the way out and I let them drive on the way back, so they know the road. Even subconsciously they've driven the corners, so they know where they are. And yes, they don't drive the same way I do because I know this road very, very well. Obviously I take care to keep an eye out for cyclists, slow moving cars turning out, but I know this road very, very well. I know how it curves, and it's great for comparing cars like these two today, because I know exactly within the law how to test them, how to drive them back to back, and it is just so much fun driving these cars. I really don't know where to finish this video because I love both. I love the PDK. I love driving the PDKs. Long distances, they're absolutely beautiful. Through traffic, they're absolutely beautiful. But if I was to own one just for fun, and I was able to buy, if I had the two cars side by side, they were perfect in every way for what I wanted. I personally would pick the manual gearbox car. Having driven so many of these Porsches now, hundreds of Porsches, I always find that the manual gearbox in any iteration seems to be the one I sort of gravitate towards. And that's not to say that the PDKs aren't great, because they are. They're absolutely fabulous. If it's your first Porsche, if it's one that you want to sort of use more regularly, then I would say the PDK is awesome. Likewise, if you find your perfect Porsche in every way, so service history all ties up, the factory options all is perfect, the colour's perfect, it's got the right seats for you, whether that be the basic seats, these two-way electric hardback sports seats which are in both cars, or the adaptive hardback sports seats which have the bolsters which go in and out, or the comfort seats with the 14-way electric with lumbar support. Whichever seats it is, if a car has all those bits but you'd made your mind up, you wanted a manual and it's a PDK, I would say just still go and drive it, because it will still be a fantastic experience. And that's where I'm going to leave it, is they are both a fantastic experience, but the manual is just that, it just edges ahead because of that involvement. You drive these cars because you want to be involved in the drive, and the manual gives you that way above any automated system can. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Like I said, please do subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos on comparing the cars. I've got another one coming up which I'm going to film talking about the options of 997 Gen 2s, particularly these two cars, and another car which I've got, which is a stunning Atlas Grey Carrera 2S Coupe. So please do subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks for watching.